Welcome to the debate. So, when you set out to sea in a small boat, there is this immediate, glaring reality you just have to accept. You do not control the ocean.
Right. Yeah. The ocean does whatever it wants.
Exactly. You don't dictate the storm clouds or, the shifting currents or sudden temperature drops.
I mean, the only things you actually control are the rudder and the sails.
Right, and most of us accept that physical reality without question. But when it comes to our actual lives, our careers, health, the economy, we constantly try to command the waves.
Oh, absolutely. We do.
Today, we are looking at the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, specifically its premise that we need to strictly divide the world into what we can control, like our judgments, and what we cannot. I'll be arguing that this radical internalization of control is really the ultimate form of personal agency and practical freedom.
Well, and I will be arguing that treating everything outside your mind as, quote, indifferent achieves peace only by preemptively surrendering our emotional investment in external reality.
So to set the stage, the foundation of Stoicism, which was developed by Zeno and refined by guys like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, it rests on a deceptively simple mechanism. You direct all your energy toward what is in your power.
Right, but...
Or just to be clear, things like health or a good job, they aren't completely meaningless. The Stoics called them preferred indifference.
Preferred, right.
Yeah, you prefer to have them, but you shouldn't stake your moral character or your ultimate happiness on them. I see this as the most radical form of agency. Like when someone loses their job, responding with clarity instead of panic isn't apathy.
I mean, it kind of looks like it sometimes.
No, because by recognizing they can't control the firing, they rewire their stress response to focus entirely on their next move. They've decided their internal response is just more important than the loss itself.
Look, I absolutely acknowledge the value of focusing on what you can control right now, but I deeply question the extreme lengths the Stoics go to get there. Take Premeditatio malorum.
The visualization of worst-case scenarios.
Right, exactly. Neurologically, they were hacking their own expectations. If you expect the boat to sink, you aren't paralyzed by panic when it springs a leak.
Which is a brilliant defensive strategy.
Is it, though? Or look at Boethius writing from prison while awaiting execution, instructing us to attach ourselves only to what we cannot lose. My issue here is if you are constantly emotionally bracing for impact, actively stripping away your vulnerability to loss, you inherently strip away what gives human attachments their meaning in the first place.
I get why you'd see it as a defensive crouch, sure, but there is a huge misunderstanding that Stoics are just, emotionally dead.
Well, they certainly read that way sometimes.
They might, but the texts explicitly say they feel grief, joy, and love intensely. The difference is the psychological mechanism. They create a cognitive gap between a stimulus and their response.
Okay, but how does that actually work in a crisis?
So when a crisis hits, they feel the initial shock. They just choose not to amplify it into a secondary panic. They experience the emotion, but they don't let it dictate their actions.
But wait, isn't that exactly the problem? If you deliberately choose never to fully cling to joy or conversely be consumed by grief, aren't you essentially putting a governor on the human engine?
A governor?
Yeah, by managing your internal environment so strictly to ensure you survive the storm, you might stay afloat, but you also fundamentally dampen the sunlight. You're trading the highest highs just to avoid the lowest lows.
Ah, but wait, isn't that exact clinging the trap? Like if your happiness requires the sun to be shining, you're going to suffer the second it rains.
Sure, but...
That is why the Stoics push this further into something called Amor fati, or the love of fate. Seneca pointed out that we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
Right.
By embracing reality exactly as it happens, rather than burning your mental bandwidth wishing the past were different, you actually free up the cognitive capacity you need to engage with the world effectively.
I mean, that sounds incredibly pragmatic until you look at the extremes of external reality.
How so?
Well, Epictetus was enslaved. Boethius faced execution. Epictetus taught that lameness is a hindrance to the leg, but not to the will. In other words, external circumstances constrain your options, but not your character.
Exactly.
But if you're listening to this and wondering how that applies to real suffering, you have to ask, Doesn't defining severe external realities merely as constraints breed complacency?
I really don't think it does.
If horrific systemic injustices are just indifferent constraints, it seems to dull the imperative to actually fight against them.
No, I don't think it dulls the fight at all. True freedom, as Boethius is recognized in that cell, is possessing yourself.
Right.
Your character, your judgment, your capacity to choose well. If you are in full possession of those things, you have something fortune and even the most unjust systems can never take away. That internal mastery is what fuels true endurance.
I hear you. And while I see immense value in that kind of emotional regulation, labeling everything outside of our control as strictly indifferent is just too steep a price for inner tranquility.
You really think so?
I do. I truly believe our vulnerability to the unpredictable external world is precisely what makes our lives meaningful.
Well, there is definitely a deep, ongoing tension here between seeking that internal mastery and remaining passionately attached to a world we cannot control.
Yeah, and it is a balance we all have to figure out for ourselves. We encourage